Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you as always for coming on.
Good afternoon.
Well, stocks in New York overnight were up a bit, the Nasdaq by a substantial amount, the employment data, other things looking worse and worse. So what was behind the gain there and in other global markets?
Yes, if you look at the Wall Street, it closed in green, or it has risen, as the investors continues to assess the impact of the pandemic on economic growth and also the flattening of the curves in the U.S. If you look at the New York and other East Coast states, they have decided to extend the shutdown of non-essential businesses to May 15th, so by another 2 weeks. Coronavirus cases in U.S. climbed to 670,000 cases, while death toll rose to 34,000 plus. Also, the Labor Department announced that the total unemployment benefit filed by employees were 5.245 million people, which is actually lower than expectation of about 6.1 million. And that has resulted into clearly some positive implication for some of the movement that we saw in U.S. market. However, though, still there is a concern about the jobless rate. The total of about last 4 weeks, about 22 million people, that is equal to 13% of unemployment if they are continued to be unemployed. So clearly, these are some of the reasons why the markets were kind of volatile. But nevertheless, market did rose because of the continued liquidity injection that was happening in the market, and we are seeing there's possibility of some easing in terms of the shutdowns in the global scales. So all in all, a bit of doubts, but nevertheless, markets were recovering due to the COVID-19 cases flattening.
And futures green across the board there as well, but big gains in the Korean markets today. The Kospi back above 1900. Just a few weeks ago, it was in the 1400s. What's the story in local stocks?
Sure. I think it's because of these the new drugs that might be, well, drugs that was already announced, but it seems to be having some impact. The Gilead was talking about the drugs that is having a quite positive implications, and that resulting into quite a big jump in terms of the futures market for the U.S. You are seeing S&P 500 futures going up by 2.7, 2.8%. The Nasdaq futures up more than 2%. And clearly that has a positive implication for Korean market. And also the Korean government have decided to put additional injection of liquidity to the system. And clearly this is a positive news. Overall, we are seeing continuation of liquidity injection as well as the new additional case of the coronavirus 19 cases for Korea remains to a very low number of less than 30 people per day. And that has resulted into quite a sharp rise of the equity market. If you look at Kospi, it was up more than 3.1%. Nasdaq was up 1.8%. Clearly, quite a significant recovery since the market crashed down to below 1,500. Now is well above 1,900 territories at this point in time.
Well, as we heard a minute ago, Statistics Korea showing the number of employed people in the country last month down by almost 200,000. Looking at the markets, though, that doesn't seem like investors took it as a surprise or vastly worse than expected. What do you make of these numbers?
Sure. Clearly, the number is actually not too bad. Of course, it is that the case that the unemployment ratio has jumped. The unemployment rate of South Korea jumped to 3.8% in March. From 3.3% in the previous month. But if you compare the numbers to the other countries, you're looking at U.S. having 4.4% unemployment ratios last month and expected to see more than 13% numbers maybe coming through if these things actually happens. Now, also, if you look at the GDP growth rate adjustment, you are seeing Korea's adjustment down to maybe minus 1.2%, whereas the global economy, you're looking at more than 3% decline or plus. So yes, it is a negative implication, but nevertheless, the level of the decline is relatively less to other countries. And also, we just had the elections, and which turned out to be quite good results in a sense that we will see quite an aggressive boosting measure coming through from the government due to the skewed parliament. All being said, we think that there will be continuation of the boosting measure from the Korean government, as well as we are seeing some of these industries having relative competitiveness in terms of the export-related industries, including the semiconductor business, as well as recent days bio sectors. So all being said, Korea seems to be doing relatively better than other countries, and that is resulting into the probably stronger recovery than most of other markets.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, thanks so much for coming on today. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend.